Hello and welcome back to freephotoshop.com and this intensive series all about the levels command. You know, we're only about halfway through this series, but we've already come so far. We've managed to look at the auto functions, the basics of channels and the RGB color space. We've checked out the histogram, applied levels to real photographs on a composite and channel by channel basis, and we've even made them alterations by using both the input and output values by way of both the mouse and some fairly nifty keyboard shortcuts. Well, now we're going to begin looking at some of the more advanced ways in which we can apply levels. You can check out the freephotoshop.com website for all the tutorials we've got coming up here in this massive series, as well as all the previous videos associated with the series, and also the huge catalogue of tips and tricks that are all available completely free of charge on the freephotoshop.com website. We're going to continue on our way here by dedicating the next batch of videos to the art of non-destructive editing, and we're going to do that by using two methods, which are 16-bit editing and the levels adjustment layer. And as it happens, we'll spend a tutorial on each of those subjects just so we can see what they are and how they work. Now, I want to start off by saying that all the levels adjustments we've applied so far have been what I'd term as static modifications, meaning that once we've applied the adjustment, there's no way of getting back into that specific alteration again and changing things around. And I've got a couple of examples that you might find helpful. So without no further ado, I'm going to come up here to the File menu and select the Browse option to open up the bridge. Then I'm going to navigate to my Levels Series folder, which contains the Next Level folder. And remember, you can use either the Favorites panel, as I'm using here, or the Folders panel, whichever you find more helpful to navigate through your hard drive. Now I'm going to go ahead and open up this deathvalley.jpg image, and once it's loaded up onto the screen here, I'm going to come up here to the Image menu and select to duplicate the image, and then I'm just going to name it Death Valley Alive and click OK. Now, I've called this image Alive because the effect we're going to apply is parametric, and when I use the term parametric, then I'm saying that the effect will be non-destructive, and you'll see what I mean in just a couple of moments. The first little exercise here, by the way, hasn't got anything to do with levels. All we're seeing here is the difference between static and non-destructive edits. So I'm going to hit the Control tab to switch back to the original Death Valley image. That's Command tab on the Mac. And then I'm going to come up here to the Edit menu and select the Fill command. Now I'm going to fill the image with a pattern and click on the thumbnail to select a pattern, and I'm going to go for the Shingles option up here on the top right hand side. Then I'm going to select the screen blending mode from the drop down menu here, and finally choose an opacity of 30%. Once I've done that, I'm going to hit the OK button. Now I'm going to collapse the palettes and switch the image to the maximize mode, and just make sure we're viewing things at the 50% view size here, and also spacebar drag so we can see the mountains and some of the sky. And I'm just telling you exactly what I'm doing here so you can follow along with me. Now, what I've done here is applied a static effect. So if I went ahead and saved this as a PSD file, for example, and then opened it back up tomorrow and realized I didn't have the changes or didn't make the changes I wanted to make after all, then there'd be no way of reversing this effect. Now, if you're following my advice from the Introducing Levels tutorial, then you'll have kept the original image for safekeeping. An excellent way of working, because if you're ever in this situation, then you can use that as an emergency plan B escape, because don't forget, if you've just opened up an image, then you'll have no history states to revert back to either. So you'll just need that original file to revert back to. The other problem is, if you've been working on this image for hours and hours, say, and you've done loads of work since making this particular change, then you're going to lose all of this work you've added on top just to lose this one particular effect that you probably added an hour ago. The alternative is, if you hit Control or Command tab to switch to the Death Valley Live image, and make sure we've got the view size set to 50%, and I can create the exact same effect as before in a non-destructive way. And I'm going to do that by coming up here to the layer menu and selecting, actually at the moment the layer style option is dimmed, and that's because we can't add a layer style, a non-destructive parametric live layer style, to a locked background layer. So open up your layers palette if it's closed, and you can do that by hitting F7 on the keyboard, of course. And I'm going to double left click on the background layer itself and then just accept the default name here and click OK. Now I can come back up here to the layer menu, select layer style and choose the pattern overlay option. Once again I'm going to enter the same settings as I did before. So once again I'm going to choose the screen blending mode to get rid of those dark colours, and notice as well that we're getting a live preview this time, which is extremely helpful in itself. I'm going to choose that same shingles pattern as I did before and set it to a 30% opacity. Then I'm going to hit OK to accept those changes. Now if I decide for some reason that I don't like the changes I've made here, I can double left click on the layer style in the layers palette, just over here, which will open back up the dialog box for the specific layer style I've clicked on. And amazingly enough, all the settings are still alive right here inside the dialog box, and I can change them around if I want to. I can even switch them completely off by pressing the eyeball. Then I can hit OK, and I have dynamically changed the document courtesy of applying a non-destructive effect in the first place. Now as long as I save the file into a format that supports layer styles, and the PSD format is the obvious choice here, then I'll be able to open up the image wherever I want to and have access to the pattern overlay settings. If I hit Ctrl or Command Tab to switch back to the static application of the pattern overlay, then we'll still be in the same boat, unfortunately. Okay, I'm going to close both of these images just like so, and then I'm going to use the little bridge button up here to open up the bridge once again. And this time I'm going to click on the first Adirondack's image here and then shift click on the second one, then come up here to the file menu and select the open command, and that's going to open both of these photographs up inside Photoshop. Now I'm going to drag the layers palette out and then collapse the rest of the palettes and finally move and expand the layers palette to the right side of the screen here, just as I'm doing. Now the first image that I have on screen here is the dead and flattened version of this photograph, and you may have noticed that this image is a JPEG, and because we don't get the option of saving layers or any kind of live effects as a JPEG, we had to flatten the image before we saved it. I'm going to increase the size here to 20% so we can see all of it on screen. Now you may or may not be surprised to know that I've made plenty of modifications to this image. I've changed the sky, I've increased the saturation of the trees, I've applied the levels command to the sky and then the whole image as independent adjustments. I've also added text and created this background overlay. The trouble is, I then went ahead and flattened the image in order to save it out as a JPEG. So now, even if I wanted to do something simple like change the text, I wouldn't be able to do it. And the same goes for the sky. You know, if I wanted to modify the colours or clouds, then I'd have to start again by reselecting the whole area, and that's just going to take up time. Now if I Control Tab or Command Tab on the Mac to the other open document, you'll see that this is entitled Alive and Parametric, and it's called that simply because it is. I'm going to increase the size of the document to 20% and then drag out the layers palette just a little, and then I'm going to change the size of the thumbnails here in the layers palette so we can all see them on screen. And I'm going to start by dragging over the whole palette, and I'm going to do this so you can see the menu I'm about to bring up, which I'll do by hitting this little wing menu icon and selecting palette options. And then I'm going to choose a small thumbnail and then click OK. Now I'll move the palette back into position like so. Now the great thing about this PSD version of the image is that everything I've done is completely live. So I can make changes to everything I've edited inside this photograph, leaving me able to make any changes I could possibly want to make at any stage of the editing process. And just to prove that I'm not duping you, I'm going to Alt click on the PC or Option click on the Mac, this little eyeball here, to make this photograph and only this photograph visible. Then I'm going to turn off the layer mask because I've taken out the sky non-destructively via the layer mask, and I'll turn it off by Control or Command clicking on the thumbnail, which allows us to now see the original white and completely blown sky at the top of the image here. Okay, I'm going to Alt or Option click on the eyeball once again to turn all the layers back on. Then I'll switch my version of the sky back on by Control or Command clicking the mask. Now if I double left click on the text layer thumbnail, then wow, look at that. You'll be amazed again just to see that the type is completely editable. And if you want to see how the rest of the image is put together in the way that I've put it together so that we can continuously edit it in a non-destructive way, then you can go ahead and download it from the freephotoshop.com website and have a play with it yourself. For now I'm just going to concentrate on the levels adjustments I've made here, because after all this is a levels series. But don't worry about the nitty-gritty yet. We'll be looking at how they work, these adjustment layers that is, in the coming tutorials. For now I just want you to see that I have 3 versions of the levels command applied to this image. The first one here is controlling just the sky. So if I double left click on the thumbnail, we'll bring up the exact live and parametric values I entered when creating the image. And I can even go ahead and adjust the composite midtone slider here to adjust the brightness values of the sky completely on the fly. This is completely live. That's what's so great about these adjustment layers. I'm going to cancel out of here and then double left click onto the next levels modification, which is this time affecting the image as a whole, seeing as it's above the main photograph layer. And that's not going to make much sense to you at the moment, but as I say, we'll be talking about these adjustment layers in the upcoming tutorials. Now once again we can enter the command parametrically and adjust any of the settings we want to. But I'm going to leave this well alone for the moment. I'm going to cancel out of here so as not to make any changes. Finally, you see this reddish underlay for the text? Well, that's created by adding a mask to the levels command, so we're just affecting a specific area of the image. I'm going to enter this version of the layers command, which, as I said, has its effect confined to the area of the mask, and we can see the area of the mask by Alt or Option clicking on the little thumbnail once again to turn on the visibility, and then clicking once more to turn it off. Now I'm going to double left click on the levels thumbnails to open up the levels dialog box, once again with the current settings already active inside the dialog. I'm going to hit Control or Command 1 to enter the red channel, and then I'll tab down to the white point slider and re-enter the value of 255 brightness levels. Then I'll Shift tab back to the gamma value and Shift down arrow to a value of 0.3 to make the underlay more of an aqua blue. But I'll hit the Enter or Return key on the keyboard to accept those changes. And by the way, something else just to note, the reason the text down here is looking a little jagged is because we're using an irregular view size of 20%. So I'll change it to 25% and things should then render much smoother inside the image. Well, I hope that's given you a good introduction to non-destructive editing here inside of Photoshop and why it's so important. Hopefully now you can see the benefits of using these live and parametric edits whenever and wherever you can. They just give you an unbelievable amount of flexibility, and of course the more flexibility you have, the better results you're going to get, especially if you're spending some serious time on your projects. In the next video we're going to look at using the levels command as an adjustment layer, followed by the advantages of editing inside a 16-bit environment. Once again, thanks for joining me here at freephotoshop.com. I'll see you in the next video.